this lesson how to have explosive growth with your leaders. Now, I love growth. In fact, I had a mentor many, many years ago who spoke to me, and he said, John, growth is happiness. And then he followed that up by saying, I've watched people that are growing anything. If they're growing a garden, there's a fulfillment in that. If they're growing a company, there's fulfillment in that. If they're growing their team, if their family is growing, he said growth is happiness. And I've always remembered that definition. And to be honest with you, I think it's so true. I think that's right. I think growth is happiness. So let's talk about it for a minute, because I think it's so essential for us to really learn how to have what I would call explosive growth. I have a passion personally for personal growth. I have a passion for team growth. I have a passion for company growth. So I'm going to give you 3 questions that how you answer these 3 questions will determine, honestly, how much explosive growth that you really have in your life. So I'm very excited about them, and so let's go. Question number 1 is, what are my everyday essentials? In other words, this is so important. If you're going to really have explosive growth, you need to be doing the things that are going to give you that high return. And that's your everyday essentials. In other words, this is not, I can do it some days and some days I don't have to do it. No, these are everyday essentials where you say, no, these are the 5 things that really help me if I do them every day to have explosive growth. For example, in my own life, I have what I call 5 everyday essentials in writing. I have written more leadership material than any person has ever lived in the history of the world. And people say, well, how did you write so many books on leadership, and how have you accomplished that? Well, it's because every day I do the essentials that help me to become an author and a writer. And I'm going to give them to you, not because that's what you're going to do. I'm giving to you them as an example of this is what you need to do if you really want to have incredible explosive growth in your life. For me as a writer, an author, every day I read. That's obviously to expand my mind so that I can keep learning. You cannot give what you don't have. So every day I read. Every day I think. And what I mean by thinking is every day I look what I read and I ask myself the question, how can I apply this to my life? How can I apply this to your life? How can I put this in a book that will help people? And because I read and because I think, I'm constantly pulling out of what I learn the essentials to help people. So every day I read, every day I think, and then thirdly, every day I file. And all that means is I take the best of the things that I've read, that I've thought about, and I put them and I file them under topics. And why do I file? I have literally filing for thousands and thousands of ideas and thoughts. And why do I file every day? Why do I do that? It's very simple, because there will be a day I want to write on that subject. And if I want to write on that subject, I'm going to have to do my very best to make sure that I have material. So when I write a book, I go to my file. So every day I read, every day I think, every day I file. And then every day I ask questions. Every day I talk to people like you and I ask questions, especially if I'm writing a book. And whatever I'm writing on, in fact, right now I'm writing a book on communication. And so when I'm around a person that's a good communicator, I ask them, how did you learn how to communicate well? And what advice would you give people? I'm asking questions. Why? Because they're going to feed me answers that I'm going to be able to share with you as a reader that'll help you. So every day I read, every day I think, every day I file, every day I ask questions, and then finally, every day I write. Now just think about it for a moment. If every day all I did was read, think, file, and ask questions, there would be nothing that would ever add value to you. I have to now take action on all those things that I have done. And so therefore I write. Every day I write. People ask me, John, I want to write a book. What do you suggest? How do I get started? I said, well, it's very simple. Start writing. Just start writing. Books don't write themselves. And you never know what you're going to have until you put it on paper. What are the 5 things that you need to do to be highly successful in this business. Just like I know the 5 things I need to do my everyday essentials to writing a book. And by the way, if you don't have to do them every day, they're not essentials. So that'll cut out a lot of the stuff that you're doing that maybe you need to do once a week or once a month or every few days. What are those everyday essentials? If you want to have explosive growth, you've got to prioritize your time with the things that are essential to really build your business. Number 2, who are the people who produce? If I want explosive growth, I've got to give most of my time and most of my effort and most of my energy to the people that are producers. I've got to look at my team and say which one of them is bringing in the business, which one is doing the recruiting. And whoever they are, those people, I've taught you in a previous mentoring lesson, the Pareto principle, that 20% of your people will give you 80% of your results. And so you got to put your time in those 20%. So if you want explosive growth, you have to, first of all, do the everyday essentials. And then the second, you got to ask yourself, who are the people who produce, and whoever they are, give them the most equipping, training, development time. And then the third question you want, if you want explosive growth, is okay, in the English-speaking world, I ask myself, what are the 3 R's? That will be true for you in your Spanish world, but let me give you the 3 things that I always look at to ask myself, am I going to have good growth in this area? The first R for me is what's required of me. In other words, what do I have to do that I just have to do it because it's part of the job? The second R is what gives me the greatest return. And in other words, I do a lot of things when I work, but what is it that when I do it, it produces the most results? In other words, there's a good return for the time I've given that certain area. So what's required of me? What gives me my greatest return? And finally, number 3, what gives me my greatest reward? Because what I've discovered is if I'm not fulfilled and enjoying what I'm doing, there's a tendency for me pretty soon not to do it, at least not to do it enthusiastically like I need to. Now, if you'll ask yourself those 3 questions, what are my everyday essentials, the things I need to do every day to be successful in this business? Who are the people who produce? Wow, this is huge. And what are my 3 R's? If you'll ask yourself those 3 questions, and you'll not only practice those 3 questions, but you'll take action on those, I will promise you, you'll begin to have explosive growth. But you've got to do all 3. You've got to do the things that are essential every day. You've got to work with the people that produce every day. And you got to follow those 3 things, those 3 R's, and especially what gives me my greatest return. When you can answer those 3 questions, you'll have explosive growth. And that's what excites me about my time with you. It's the practical things. Do you see how simple it is to have explosive growth? You don't have to know everything. You don't have to do everything. Just ask those 3 questions and see the return that you get. Thanks for being with me. My name's John. I'm your friend. And I want to talk to you about having the courage to continue. Again, these monthly mentoring sessions that we do together are just to help you every month, every 30 days to learn something new and then apply it to your life and apply it to your team for the next 30 days until I come and be with you again. You know, often I'm asked the question, especially during difficult times like we are in today with a lot of adversity, how do I continue? One of the questions I was asked when COVID hit, for the first 6 months, everybody asked the question, how long will this last? How long will this last? And it's the wrong question to ask. If you and I want to continue and really have courage in the midst of all kind of difficulties in our life, the answer is very simple. We need to focus on today. Today matters. And if you and I focus on today, trust me, my friend, we will have enough courage for 24 hours. I don't know if I have a courage for a week. I'm not sure I have courage for a month. Wow, maybe I don't have courage for the next year. But I'm not asking for that. I'm saying that if you want to continue in your life to be successful, you have to have a focus on today. Courage, I describe it in a picture like courage is like a door, okay? And what's interesting about this door is the handle is on the inside. It's not on the outside. And the only way that door is going to be opened is for you to walk over and for you to turn that handle. There's nobody on the outside that can open the door of courage for you. There's nobody on the outside that can do something for you that'll make you courageous. It's a personal act that you just basically say, I'm going to go over to that door. I'm the only one that can turn that handle. I'm the only one that can open up the door of courage, and I'm going to do it. It's a choice. It's a commitment. So let's talk about that commitment for a moment. I want you to know, first of all, courage is not an absence of fear or failure. So when we think of courage, don't think of a person that just has no fear. Oh my gosh, they just have no fear. Look what they do. Or failure doesn't seem to bother them at all. They seem to be able to overcome their failures. I just want you to know that courageous people experience failure in their life. Courageous people have fears in their life. But the difference is, remember the door's on the handle's on the inside. And they understand something about their fear, and they understand something about their failures. They understand something about their faith and their belief. And what they understand is that they have to build up the stronger emotion by focusing on it, because what you focus on expands. And so what they do is they focus on courage instead of focusing on fear. If I focus on courage every day, and if I live every day to be courageous just for that day, one day at a time, guess what happens? Every day I increase my courage. Just like if I, instead of focusing and going to that handle of that door that has courage, what happens if I go over and turn on that handle that has fear in my life? If every day I get more fearful, all I do is I increase by focusing on a negative emotion until it expands in my life, until the fear dominates the failure. Whichever emotion dominates, the positive faith, belief, the negative fear, failure, whichever dominates, that's where our actions follow the dominant emotion. And what's powerful about this is it doesn't have to be 90% belief and 10% fear. It could maybe be 60-40. You could have quite a bit of fear in your life and still be very courageous because you got 60% belief that allows you to go ahead and try it even though you're not sure. So you want to always build up the stronger positive emotion. Another thought on courage is the fact that courage requires action. You have never become courageous by thinking about it. You and I never become courageous by hoping for it or dreaming about it. We only become courageous when we take action. There is no success without action. I'm always amazed at the people who try to think their way into success. They try to kind of maybe wait on success. You have to take action. When I was a young leader, I had a mentor that just gave me an exercise that was life-changing to me because he said, John, you don't take enough action. And so he said, I want you to, for 30 days, when you wake up in the morning before you get out of your bed, say out loud to yourself 50 times, do it now, 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 do it now. He said 50 times. Say it out loud every morning, then get out of bed. He said every night before you lay your head on that pillow 50 times. Again, say out loud, do it now, do it now, do it now, do it now. He said, I want you to do that for a month, 50 times every day, every morning, 50 times every evening. And I did. I just went home and every morning, do it now, every night, do it now. 2 days, 3 days, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And what I want you to know is by the time I got into the 30 days, every morning when I'd wake up, my first thought was action. Act on it. Do it now. Do it now. And I want to encourage you. I began to start saying things. I mean, right now I'm talking to you. I promise you, there are things that you have procrastinated that you're hoping will go away and you'll never have to deal with, and you're just fooling yourself. They're not going to go away. And the only way that you're ever going to knock that giant out of your life is by taking action. And the last thought I want to give you about courage is that life expands with your courage. Just like, let me just say this, it shrinks with your lack of courage. Your life can get bigger and better, or your life can get smaller and it can get worse. Let me illustrate it by saying there's a difference between a puzzle and life. If you've ever put together like 1,000-piece puzzle, you know what you do. You put the pieces on a table like this, but you got a box, don't you? And on that box is a picture. Every puzzle has a picture. The picture is the vision of what that puzzle will look like when you complete it. So here's what's interesting about the difference between a puzzle and life. With a puzzle, you get to see the clear picture before you begin. In fact, you watch that picture and you find the pieces and you put the puzzle together. But you see the picture before you begin. In life, it's exactly opposite. You have to begin before you can see the clear picture. And most people lack the courage because they don't understand it's the action that will provide the picture for them. That the moment that they move out, that the moment that the closer you move to what you see, the clearer you see what you're moving toward. So don't miss it. Don't wait for the action to become clear. Don't say, well, the moment that I really figure it out, I'm going to get started. Or the moment I get my answers, boy, I'm going to begin. You know, you get the answers as you begin. You figure it out as you go. It's the action that brings clarity to the picture. So courage is basically going to that door and turning that knob. No one's going to turn it for you. And say, I'm going to take action. I'm going to walk out this door today. And as I start walking, I don't have all the answers, but I'll find them. As I start walking, I don't see the whole picture, but I'll see it more clearly. Trust me. That's how you get the courage to continue. You got to start to continue. Take action today on what you know you should be doing, but you haven't done it yet, and you'll be surprised how quickly the courage comes to you. But Jonathan and I have talked about this. When we come to you monthly, we expect you then to take what I teach and say, okay, for the next 30 days, let me apply that to who I am, what I do in the Zifra business. And today I want to talk to you about the 21 from my book. I wrote a book several years ago called The 21 Qualities of a Leader. In fact, this is going to surprise you because people come to me all the time. They say, John, I want to be a leader. I want to learn how to lead well. Where do I start? In fact, they'll say, what book do I begin with? And whenever they ask me that question, my answer always surprises them because I tell people, if you really want to be a terrific leader, the first book that I've written a lot of them, on leadership that you should read is The 21 Qualities of a Leader. Now, that's a very popular book. It sold millions of copies, but it's not by far one of my best-known books. And so when people say, oh, I'm surprised that you would have the 21 Qualities of a Leader, and here's why it's so important. The qualities that I'm going to teach you here in a moment, and I won't have time for 21, but I'll teach a few. The qualities are foundational for your leadership life. If you're just going to build a one-story house, you don't really need much of a foundation. You can just kind of put a cement slab underneath of it, and you can build that one story. You don't need a great foundation because you're not building a great building. You're just one story. But if you came to me and said, I really want to build a skyscraper, in other words, I want my leadership just to stretch to the heavens. I want to do big things in leadership. The first thing I would say to you is, you've got to get the foundation right. If the foundation is correct, you can build a skyscraper of leadership for your life. And the foundation are the qualities, because the qualities Those are the things that express who you are on the inside. The qualities are in such a way that they make you better on the inside, so you become better on the outside. They make you bigger on the inside, then you become bigger on the outside. And one of those qualities, I have time just maybe for 3 or 4, but one of those qualities is character. And character is so essential to who you are because it's character that it makes you trustworthy. You see, a person with good character has authenticity. What you see is who they really are. A person with character has terrific integrity. They tell the truth. They keep their promises. They do what they say they will do. They become very trustworthy. And trustworthy is essential for great leadership. And when a person has good character, it is foundational for them. But it's not only foundational for them to build their leadership, it's foundational for you to build a relationship with them. Because you know that they have the character, the strength, the core, the anchor, the foundation that will really allow them to serve and do you very, very well. You see, when people are going to follow a leader, one of the questions they ask is, can I trust that person? Well, character is that quality that makes you, it's that quality that makes me trustworthy. So it's a beautiful thing. So I tell people, before you work on the outside of your leadership, work on the inside of your leadership. You know, another quality of a leader that I talk about in the 21 Qualities book is the quality of commitment. And it's so essential for leaders to be men and women of commitment. And why I say that is because commitment separates the doers from the dreamers. You see, in your business, a lot of times they talk about the dream. And, you take the dream. What do you want to become? Sometimes you post it on your refrigerator, and this is who I want to be in the future. And to have a dream is a good thing. But one of the things you're going to learn about the dream that you have is the dream doesn't come true because you have the dream. There has to be a quality that makes that dream a reality, and that quality is commitment. And if you're committed, it takes you from being a dreamer to a doer. If you're not committed, you're just a dreamer. And there are a lot of people who think that the dream is enough. It's not. You see, the dream is free, but the journey isn't. That's why people like to sit around the table and talk about what they would like to become, and they have these great dreams. But honestly, when you get up from the table, you've got to make it happen. See, dreams are free, but the journey's not. And since the journey, which is what brings you to the reality of that dream, it costs something, commitment is the core. Commitment is essential quality for you to have as a leader to make your dreams come true. Another quality that I express in the 21 Qualities of a Leader book is generosity. The willingness and the ability to give on the front end. A lot of times people say, well, I may give to that, but I'm going to see what I'm going to receive first. And a lot of people are saying, well, if I receive something, then I'll give. And they don't understand that sowing comes before reaping. No farmer ever went out to the fields that he hadn't worked, that he hadn't sown any seed in, and come fall look and say, well, I wonder what kind of crop I'm going to receive this time. It's impossible. You see, fall harvest is only a reality if there's been a spring sowing. It always begins with not what am I going to receive, but what am I going to give. I have an expression sometimes I use that I love, and that is, your candle loses nothing when it lights another. If I have a lit candle and I am generous towards you and I extend it to you and you can light your candle off of it, my candle doesn't go out. I just turn on 2 lights instead of 1. And I think there's a scarcity mindset that many people say, well, if I give, I'm afraid I'm going to lose something, and they don't forget so many times that what they lose if they don't give is opportunity. Generosity opens the door to incredible opportunity. It opens up the door for us to have life change and to help change lives. And one of the ways that you build a successful business is to be extremely generous. Angela Ahrendts, who was the CEO of an incredible company in London, and then she became also number 4 with Apple, the highest paid female executive in the world. I think her last year she made $78 million. We were having lunch one day, and I said, Andrea, what's the best advice you ever received? And she said, my father taught me as a young child, give 60 and take 40. In other words, always give more than you ever expect to receive. And then she smiled and she says, 60 is enough. And I've discovered that that's true, that if you give 60 but only ask 40 back, if you're always giving more than others, there's an incredible relationship that is built. But that means that you're now sowing seed in others. Robert Louis Stevenson used to say, I determine the success of my day not by the harvest I reap, but by the seeds that I sow. I love that quote, and I think he's exactly right. I determine the success of my day every day, not by what did I receive, but what did I give? And I would encourage you to become intentionally generous. Now, I only had time today to give you 3 of those qualities. Character, which is the foundation, commitment, which literally compounds over time, and generosity. But if you'll just build your leadership life on those 3 things, this month, just intentionally do those 3 things every day to every person that you meet. And I promise you, you'll become on the inside the leader you want to become on the outside. Unstoppable leadership. How to lead yourself, how to lead your business during any difficult, tumultuous time. That's the question. How do you and I continually lead successfully even during COVID or times when adversity begins to come our way? I've given a lot of thought and a lot of consulting with companies and teams about how to continually succeed during these difficult times, how to be unstoppable. And what I'm going to talk to you today about, I promise you, is going to help you no matter what adverse situation you face in your business. I want to talk to you on the subject, how to receive a return on your failure. Now, while we hear an awful lot about having a return on our investment, an ROI, or maybe a return on our time. I mean, I gave it this much time. I'd like to have some kind of a return out of it. But I've discovered that people don't look for a return on their failure. In fact, they don't want to fail. They don't want to sometimes admit failure. They want to remove themselves from any kind of failure. And that's why, as I talk to you about this today, I promise you that I'm going to deliver some material to you that's going to be your best friend when difficulties and setbacks come your way. Because you see, let's start off with the fact that everybody fails. I fail. You fail. In fact, failure to me is quite common. It's not something that happens once a year or every 6 months. I pretty much fail on a continual daily basis. I have misses. I have losses. And I bet you do too. Now, something that happens so often in our life, we need to learn how to handle it correctly. It's not something that we have to handle every 6 months or year. Pretty much, I have to be able to understand failure, handle it correctly, and get a return on it on a daily basis. Everyone fails. No one likes it. And I will promise you that nobody loves failure. I've never had a person walk into my life and said, probably the biggest motivation in my life has been my failures. That doesn't happen. We're not motivated by our failures. Sometimes we're discouraged by our failures. And so what I'm going to talk to you about today, I promise you, is going to give you an amazing return on your misses and on your losses that you have as a leader. Now, as a young leader, I had a real fear of failure. I was just starting off. I wanted to prove myself, and I definitely thought that failure was my enemy, and I definitely thought that if I failed a lot, people would look at me and say, well, it's obvious to us that you're not a good leader. So I was mentored by a wonderful man, a terrific leader himself, Robert Schuller. And one day when he was talking to me and we were dealing with how I did not like failure and how I tried to avoid failure and how I had a fear of failure, Dr. Schuller said to me, John, what would you attempt to do if you knew that you wouldn't fail? Well, I had never looked at life quite like that in business, and so it kind of helped me for a while. I kind of went into every project basically saying I won't fail. And so there was kind of a positivity that began with me in the beginning of the project. And I kind of went in with quite a bit of strength and steam. But there was a problem with the question. What would you attempt if you knew that you wouldn't fail? The problem with the question, it's not true to life. There is nothing that you and I can go into with the assurance that there won't be failure in it. And so what happened is it made me strong on the front end, but it blindsided me when I got into the project because all of a sudden, even though I started it as if I wouldn't fail, guess what happened? Humanly, I failed. I had some misses. So I really learned very quickly that I couldn't go into life kind of like eliminating the possibility of failure, that I had to somehow not only include that possibility, but appreciate it. And not only appreciate it, but appreciate it to the level where I would learn from it. So how does that happen? So over time, I developed my own question about failure, and this is the one I want to give you, which will be the foundation, the platform of everything that we talk about today. And here's the question. What would you attempt to do if you knew that the failure would give you a positive return? In other words, when you go into a project in business, you know that there are going to be failures. But what would you do if you knew that when you had a failure, instead of it being a setback, a minus, a hurt, a negative, what would you attempt to do if you knew that failure, when it was looked at correctly from the right perspective and respond to it correctly, what would you do if you realized that the failures that you have in your project today, in your business, can give you a positive return? Now, what happens is the moment you and I have this mindset, and by the way, this is realistic. What I'm about to teach you will give you a positive return in your failure. So this is not some pie in the sky. It's not Disneyland. This will work for you. The failures you have in your project, once you understand the benefits of failure and once you begin to respond correctly to it, there are so many positives to it that I will promise you, instead of becoming embarrassed by your failure, after a while, you'll begin to embrace it. And that will make you unstoppable. You see, what stops people in their business and progress is failures, setbacks, disappointments, expectations that weren't met. Those are the things that make what we're attempting to do frail, feeble, until we stop. To put unstoppable in your business, to put unstoppable in your life, you have to have a healthy respect and love for what failure can do for you. Now, when we anticipate a return on failure, in other words, I say, I'm in the project and I think there'll be some misses here, there'll be some losses, there'll be some failures. When that happens, if we expect a positive return on our failure, our whole response to failure will immediately change. It won't bother us at all to fail first. We'll jump in before anyone else jumps in because we know that whenever they jump in, there's going to be some failure. So we immediately become more initiators in our projects when we have a positive return on our failure. And we'll not only fail first, we'll fail fast. It won't bother us at all. In fact, we know that the more misses I can get out of my way, the quicker I can get to where I really want to go. And we'll fail frequently. Now, if you don't have a positive return for your failure, you're still going to fail frequently also. But the difference is when you know that you can get something good out of a loss, what happens is it doesn't bother you to have another loss because you know it's going to be a lesson that you learn and you know it's going to be progress that you make. Here's what's most important. When you realize you can get a positive return out of your failure, you'll fail forward. In other words, when you fall forward. You even make progress in your fall. And so much of success is not there were no problems and there were no obstacles and everything was smooth. No, so much of success is that it was a series of failing forward. And that's what, when you get a positive return out of your failure, that's what you'll do. So,
what advice would you give to your younger self about crisis and adversity? Let's say you were 20 years younger, maybe me, John. What advice would you give me? I mean, your younger self.
I've got a great smart aleck answer for that. Because what advice would I give to my younger self? I would give my younger self the advice of listening to the older self. I would just say, hey, young John, listen to old John. He's been through a few battles and through wars. It's a great question. It deserves better than a kind of flippant, funny answer. and the fact, here's what I do believe, though. When I was a young leader, I wish I would have spent more time with people that were more experienced and successable. I did good, but I didn't do great.
Yeah.
Let's just put it this way: I could have done a lot better, Mark. And it's not. I'm not putting a premium on old age or even experience because there's some fantastic things that youth bring you as far as energy and risk and things. So it's not like experienced people have it over inexperienced people, but they have, for sure, if they're successful. Now, I'm talking about only successful people. I'm not talking about old people. I'm not talking about people who worked all their life. I'm talking about people who've worked all their life and they're successful. Here's what I know. Here's what I know. The questions you have for someone older that's experienced and successful, they've experienced the question you're going to ask. Oh. Now, that's huge. There's one thing for me to know how to answer your question, and there's another thing for me to have experienced your question.
Wow.
And the difference is, if I've experienced your question, I can give you wisdom, especially if I was teachable and successful. If I answer your question without the experience, I can just give you a good answer. But what you're really needing during a crisis is wisdom, not just a good answer. In fact, I tell young people, you already have a good answer, you just don't have wisdom going with it.
Yeah. So
you're a little unarmed. You know what is right, but you don't know why it's right, how it's right, when it's right. It's the experience that gives you that outer coating that makes you really solid.
You know what I love about that answer, John, is just a few days ago I asked John a question, something about how to deal with something in the crisis. Do we make a decision now? Do we wait? Mm-hmm. And John, you said, you very rarely do you say this to me, and hear me all the way out here. You said, man, Mark, I don't know. I've never led in this kind of a time. But then very quickly, it gave me comfort. You know what? I'm leading in unprecedented times, and my mentor, 20 years my senior, doesn't know either. I mean, he experiences, I don't know, but then very quickly went, but let me tell you what we did when 9/11 hit. Let me tell you, when my ISS company, a stewardship company that John had that's raised $4 billion for nonprofits, let me tell you what we did during that time. Yeah. So asking somebody, and let me get the name again, Kamiko, asking somebody or getting somebody that has more experience, that has done something, is very good. They may not have led here, or they may not have led exactly in your situation, but they can give you experience based on another time that reminds a lesson in how you walk through it.
That's very insightful and it's very good, Mark. And I would just say this. When I give Mark my mentoring or my experienced answers, I then let him make that decision. Mm. I think the trouble that we older people get into is when people ask for advice, we want to control. And I've never had you come and say, John, could you control my life for me? You've asked for advice. There's a difference.
Yeah.
And advice means I give you my best thoughts, my best shots, my best wisdom. But then you've got to go make that decision.
Yep.
Because how are you going to get the experience if you don't go make that decision on your own? So I think that as an older person, a mentor or whatever, I have to always remember what my place is. My place is to give you everything I can give you, the very best that I can give you. But at the end of that, then bless you and say, now it's yours. You become a better leader by making the decision. You don't become a better leader by me controlling you.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of us young leaders, if you'll allow me to call myself young, I don't think I qualify for that anymore. But just
in my
for the
eyes, you qualify.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Say more.
You look awfully young to me.
But for those of
us, young.
Those of us that are really working hard to lead, and I've had some brand new opportunities to lead in January, only 6 weeks later to be hit with the coronavirus that's becoming the corona financial virus as well. And I'll tell you this is what I've told you, John, and I want to encourage some of you that are leading and wanting to lead. Lead through this. Lead through this. The moral authority of the previous generation came when they led through difficult times that they had never led before. And John, I want 6 months a year. I don't know how long this is going to be, but I want 6 months or a year for you to go, wow, Mark's a great leader. I picked him. I like him. Man, he gained moral authority in this one.
Yeah,
that's my commitment to you.
Well, you're going to do that. That's going to happen to you. And you can't get moral authority in a classroom. You don't get moral authority through knowledge. You don't get moral authority through position or title. You get moral authority by taking people through a leadership crisis successfully. And you're going to get that. But what I think I want the listeners to hear right now is that that you and I have high odds of losing millions of dollars. Mm-hmm. Okay? You just need to hear that, okay? And yet, we're still thinking of the people first. We're still keeping our values. We're still thinking clearly. We still have a real sense of peace. And we don't know the outcome. And I think that's powerful. That's where you get moral authority. Yep. On the back end, everybody can brag and lie. But in the middle, there's no bragging and lying here. This thing this thing could put you under. This thing could put me. Who knows where it's all going to go. But can I tell you something? There's an expression that Alan Malawi taught me, who was that great leader at Ford Motor Company when he turned that around, and that when things would go that he didn't always like or just challenges he had to make. I loved his expression when he just always said, "It's okay."
Yeah,
it's okay.
Yep,
it's okay. And all he was saying is, "I'll figure it out. There's always an answer. Don't have it now, but it's okay." And what I want you to see about this is that when you have that sense that there is an answer, and you have that sense of confidence within yourself, what that means is it really works in the bad times. See, don't miss this.
That's right.
Don't miss this. Everybody's secure when everything's going their way and confident when everything. But we're telling you right now, I feel secure. I feel confident. I feel confident. I'm going to lose some money, but I feel confident that there's still an answer, and there's a way. There's a way that we're going to find the answer. It's okay. How to turn adversity into an advantage. And there's part of this title I like, there's part of this title I really don't like. What I really want you to get is the fact that in adversity, there are certain advantages that adversity and crisis bring to us that without that adversity, we wouldn't have those advantages. We wouldn't have those opportunities. That's kind of the thesis of the lesson today. When I looked at the title, How to Turn Adversity into an Advantage, I wasn't trying to think of it in a wrong term as far as how to take advantage of people that are in adversity. That isn't that at all. I mean, remember yesterday I shared with you that in a leader's perspective, it's always the people first. What's always best for the people? That keeps a leader's motives pure and right. If you and I are constantly saying, well, what's best for my people? Because whatever is best for my people as a leader, I should be doing my very best to provide it for them. But this is a terrific lesson on the fact that in adversity, if we have the right perspective, and this is a lesson on perspective, trust me. In fact, today and tomorrow, this is a part 1, tomorrow's part 2. This is a perspective lesson. What I want you to catch, though, is that without any question, the adversity that you and I are going through right now does have distinct advantages for us. That I know. You say, John, how do you know that? Well, it's very simple. Every crisis and every adversity in the history of the world has turned into terrific advantage for society. Again, I remember I mentioned yesterday, every medicine you take was because there was an adversity, a problem. Somebody had something that needed to be cured, so somebody went and invented a medicine. In other words, good things come out of bad things if you have the right perspective. If you have the wrong perspective, that's not true. So this lesson is on how do I take the adversity and gain some advantage out of it for myself, for my family, for my community, for others. And when I go to perspective, here's the quote: how we view things is how we do things. So it's possible for two people to view adversity and have two different responses to that adversity. One takes adversity and turns it into an advantage, and the other one takes adversity and says, oh, I'm at a disadvantage, and I'm a victim, and they just basically lay down, and instead of getting better, they get worse. Same adversity, same situation, two total different responses. Now, the responses are based upon a person's perspective. Let me give you an example. Albert Einstein, here was a brilliant fellow. Albert Einstein said this: in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. Now, I've loved that statement for quite some time, and I share it with you because I think there's something very interesting in what Albert Einstein said. He said it was in the middle. In the middle. In fact, when I put that quote in here, I capitalized all the letters on middle. In the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. You know what Einstein was saying? He's saying you have got to get into the crisis. You have got to get into the middle of the problem before you see how to get opportunity out of it. Because at the beginning, we don't understand how deep the problem's going to be. It doesn't affect us enough to take away our options so that all of a sudden we get desperate for an answer. It's not at the end. If by the end we haven't seen opportunity, to be honest with you, we just passed it. The door was back in the middle. But in the middle of difficulty, adversity, crisis, that's where Albert Einstein said, that's where we find opportunity. It's that type of thinking, perspective for you and me that I want to talk about, because trust me on this, if we have the right perspective, we're going to find that to be very true. Now, let me give you an example. Now, this is a business example. Some of you are in the business world, some of you are not. So let me just give you this one because I read it just the other day, and it fits the business community. So if you've got a team, if you've got an organization, you got a big company, small company, whatever. This comes out of Forbes, and when I was going through and reading this, the thing that really grabbed my attention was the headlines. It said the coronavirus crisis is creating problems, but it is also creating tremendous opportunities. This comes out of Forbes. And so then they gave an example, and the example they gave there I know pretty well, and they gave the example of the Ford Motor Company. And the Ford Motor Company, if you go back about 12 years, had quite a few years consecutive of poor performance. They were in a recession, and they needed to finance. In fact, they were so desperate that Bill Ford, the father of the whole Ford clan, basically sat down and had to talk them into collateralizing and the blue Ford Oval. The thing that's most precious to Ford is that brand, that trademark. And they literally had to take that and use it for collateral to borrow money to get themselves financially in a position where they could maybe upright themselves. And then they also brought in Alan Malawi, brought in an outsider, a terrific leader. And if you know the story, it's an incredible story. It's a story of an amazing turnaround, maybe the most amazing corporate turnaround in this century. But what I want you to see is it was only in the adversity, the heavy crisis. I mean, what would make the Ford family say, okay, we're going to use this incredible trademark as collateral to borrow money? I mean, that's the last thing in the world they wanted to give up. But can I tell you something? A crisis will make you do things that you wouldn't do without the crisis. Let me just stop and talk to you for a moment. You and I both know in our heart that there are some changes we won't make unless we have to make them. Now, I speak for myself. In my life, there have been a few times I just didn't want to make the change until all the other options were stripped away from me. And one day I looked at myself and said, I've got to make the change. Well, it happened for the Ford Motor Company, and in this Forbes article, it then put three things on the advantages of a crisis. And I give this to you quickly because this is in the business field. I'm getting ready to come to you in the personal way, so stay right with me. Here's what Forbes said. First of all, a crisis changes the balance of risk and reward. And they so clearly wrote the fact that during normal circumstances and situations, we don't risk a lot. We enjoy where we are, and the tendency always is for us to stay put, not make a lot of changes. And the fear of failure overrules the risk issue. So we basically stay the same. But what happens is that in a crisis, all of a sudden it helps us realize that we have to change. All of a sudden, what was kind of optional, should we change, becomes a command. We have to change. Why? Because we're in deep weeds. And so basically Forbes was saying if you have a business, if you have a team, whatever, that there are perhaps some things in your life that you've just held pat that you should have let go a long time ago. And you're going to risk more during a crisis. And they said that was good. Number two, and I love this because it's so true, a crisis increases our focus. You see, every organization has what I would call competing priorities and conflicting priorities. Some priorities that just conflict with where you're really wanting to go, and then you have some that internally compete with what you're trying to accomplish. And so what happens is there's a lot of activity in an organization that isn't necessarily accomplishment. But what does a crisis do? We immediately begin to eliminate all of the things that are not totally essential in our business. In other words, we begin to cut. We begin to look and say, what do I have to have versus what was nice to have? And that's happening right now. I mean, it's happening everywhere over America. People are looking and they're reevaluating. And what they're doing is that this crisis is causing me. I mean, I could give you a lot of personal examples in my life that I'm just saying, okay, I now have to focus on not what is wonderful, what is nice, what I would like to be included in. I have to focus on one thing, what's essential. Everything else falls aside. There's a terrific benefit in business when you begin to get rid of conflicting or competing priorities. Major difference. And say, okay, we've just got to stay with the main thing. We got to make the main thing, like Covey says, the main thing. So, as Forbes was pointing out, so good, it basically a crisis gets us to take more risk. Crisis increases our focus. And number three, what it does is it identifies leaders. Because what do leaders do during a crisis? They stand up and they stand out. You see, you can't manage your way out of a crisis. You have to lead your way. If you could manage your way, there would be small incremental changes that you can control and feel comfortable with that you would begin to allow in your life that would get you out of the issue. And that isn't going to get you out of a crisis. All of a sudden, you've got to have somebody stand up and say, wait, I'm going to lead my way out. I'm going to get creative in my thinking. I'm going to get bold in my decision making. Wow. Now, here's what I want you to see in business or in your personal life. Einstein was right. It's in the middle of the difficulty where the opportunity begins to show itself. I could give you all kinds of examples of what I can sense as a leader that's beginning to happen. Now, I don't have the back end. I don't have the whole story. I'm looking at a picture that's not complete. But let me just give you an example. What's happened in the education world? Well, what's happened in the education world is all the kids got home. Not only in elementary and high school, but universities, colleges, sent the kids home. We got to have our social distancing. And by the way, I think that was a very wise decision. I think right now, social distancing is probably the most important thing we can do to cut this out and probably, hopefully, get some answers and move on with their life. But now, so what are the kids doing? Online classes. Kids, millions of kids right now are on online courses. Now, online courses, that's not new. That's been around for about 12, 15 years. And there has been a slow, steady increase of students taking online courses. But now they all have to do it. And here's what's going to happen. There are kids who have never taken an online course, and they're going to do that, and then they're going to look at themselves and say, wait a minute, I'm home. I can be in surroundings that are familiar to me. I don't have to go back to college if I don't want to. I can get a degree online. Now, I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying I can guarantee you, I promise you, that there are a bunch of students that are all of a sudden going to see that there's another way to get their education. I'm not even saying it's a better way, but I'm just saying crisis causes change. And I will tell you, that steady increase in online kind of classes, after this, it's going to be like that. It's just going to increase. Why? Because a lot of kids who have never done it before tested it and said, oh, this kind of works for me. I think in the business community, when people are working from home, I think it's going to change the work environment. I really do. I'm not saying it's pro or con. It doesn't matter. What I'm wanting you to see is that crisis causes you and I to make changes that we would never make if we didn't have the crisis. The way I prefer it is to say crisis bumps us out of our comfort zone into our creative zone. That's a great statement. Crisis bumps us. In fact, if I don't get the bump, I won't get out of my comfort zone. It's the bump that gets me out of my comfort zone into the creative zone. Okay, now that's business. Okay, so for you that have organizations, teams, companies, whatever, hopefully that helps you. The rest of this lesson today and the lesson tomorrow is going to be in a very personal way from me to you. And it's going to be applicable to you personally. It's going to be applicable to your family. It's going to be applicable to all of your friends. But it's going to be just one-on-one. And I'm going to just tell you, there are some major advantages that we're going to receive out of the adversity that we're now going through. And by the way, one more thought. When we're in the middle of the crisis, where the opportunity, as Einstein says, there are two kinds of people. In the middle of the crisis, there are some people who are basically saying, how long will this last? We're all asking that, by the way. How long will this last? But there's a higher level of person who is saying, while I'm in it, how can I get better? How can I improve? What can I learn? How can I make this a stepping stone instead of a stumbling block? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk to you about bad experiences for a moment. And there are 3 thoughts on bad experiences, since we're having one, a big one. The first thought on bad experiences is this: everyone has them. And everyone is in the middle of this crisis. I mean, no one is excluded. All of us are being touched. But, some days you're a pigeon and some days you're a statue. Some days you get the privilege of dumping on someone. Some days you're the one that gets dumped on. Well, a crisis is where, let me define a crisis. A crisis is where we're all a statue, okay? We're all getting dumped on. I can think back to 2008 when the economic recession really hit us. And as a speaker, I said, wow, I've got to help people. Again, that's what a leader does. The moment there's a problem, first thought of a leader, got to help people. And so I thought, okay, how can I help people? And I remember sitting down in my office at home, and while speaking engagements, everything was canceling and everything was kind of going south. And I developed a teaching, a lecture, and it became a huge popular lecture for the next 3 to 4 years. And that is how to do good things when things are all so bad. How do you do good things? And it got out that I was going to have a teaching that how do you do good things when things are so bad? And for the next 3 years, companies, groups of people that wanted me to come and speak, they'd say, John, do that speech on how to do good things when things turn out bad. And it was just a pure teaching on, okay, it's bad, but while it's bad, we don't have to stay bad. This is the point. While it's bad, we can say, what good thing can I do? What good thing can I learn? Wow. That's perspective. That's the difference. And for 3 years, I literally went around the world, not only around the country, around the world, talking about how to do good things when things are so bad. Why? Because it gave a message of positive application and hope. You see, what we do with bad experiences defines who we become. What we do with bad experiences defines who we become. The second thought that I want to give you about bad experiences, not only everyone has one, okay? So we're all in the same boat, okay? And there's a hole in the boat, and it's going to affect all of us. Number 2, no one likes bad experiences. I have never met a person who comes to me and says, you know what, John, I think I'm the most happy and fulfilled during a crisis. I just, you know what, John, I love problems. I love questions I can't answer and issues I can't solve. Nobody likes this. Nobody. I don't, you don't, we don't like it. I think we're kind of like Lucy, who just basically said one time, I don't want ups and downs, I just want ups. Okay, let's take a vote. You may be all by yourself, you may be with family members, or maybe just a couple people since we're social distancing, but every one of you do what I'm going to do. Let's all do a vote. How many of us, we want to join Lucy's club? We just want ups and ups. But in fact, I really want ups and ups, and I know you really want ups and ups. And in a real world, we don't get ups and ups. Now, fortunately, we don't get just downs and downs. But in the real world, we get ups and downs, and we've got to be like my friend in college who told me one time, he said, John, I'm never down. I said, what do you mean you're never down? He said, I'm either up or I'm getting up. Well, in a crisis, what we're doing is getting up because we've been knocked down. You see, the issue is not have we been knocked down. The issue is, do we stay down? Or do we say, I don't like down. I want to get back up. It's those who don't like down, but go from not liking it to do something about it, that action, to get back up. But none of us likes a crisis. We all have it. None of us like it. My friend Chuck Swindoll, several years ago, he sent me this, and I'm going to just read it to you. It's about Chippy, a parakeet, okay? And he starts off by saying, Chippy the parakeet never saw it coming. One second, he was peacefully perched in his cage singing. And the next moment, he was sucked in, washed up, and blown over. His problem began when his owner decided to clean his cage with a vacuum. She stuck the nozzle in to suck up the seeds and feathers in the bottom of the cage. Then the phone rang. Instinctively, she turned to pick it up. She had barely said hello when Chippy got sucked in. She gasped. She let the phone drop. She turned off the vacuum, and with her heart in her mouth, she unzipped the bag, and there was Chippy, alive but stunned, covered with heavy black dust. She grabbed him. She rushed him to the bathtub, turned on the faucet full blast, and held Chippy under the torrent of ice-cold water, power washing him clean. So she did what any compassionate person, an owner, would do. She snatched up the hairdryer and blasted the wet, shivering little bird with hot air. And this story closes by just this beautiful phrase. Chippy doesn't sing much anymore. Of course, Chippy doesn't sing much anymore. Oh, there's a whole bunch of us right now. We've been blasted, and we're just not doing a lot of singing. You see, in bad experiences, everyone has them and no one likes them. And the last thought I want to give you on bad experiences, and then I'm going to turn to perspectives in a moment, is very few people make bad experiences positive experiences. Very few. But I am talking to the few. Our time together is for me to rally the few. I don't have any illusion that I'm going to rally the masses. But right now, I'm just trying to rally you. Because if I can rally you and get you seen with the right perspective how you can get better through this crisis, guess what you can do? You can then do the same for your family. What a gift for your family if all of a sudden you become the person that shows them the light at the end of the tunnel. Wow. That's why Warren Lester said, success in life comes from not holding a good hand, but in playing a poor hand well. Wow. That's beautiful. You see, everything's changed for me. I shared with you yesterday on leading through a crisis that, I literally had dozens of speaking engagements that have been canceled, and the one that I wanted to help everybody, but one really, really, really hurt. Wow, I'd had the opportunity late April to go to the Vatican, and I had an invitation by Pope Francis to do 3 days of teaching with him on what I called a master class with the Pope on leadership. Oh, I look so much forward to time with him and time helping lift that load. And of course, it's all gone. It's all gone. It's all gone. So, again, so when I had somebody call me and say, what are you doing right now? What I'm doing is I'm making lemonade. And that's what I want you to do. I want you to make lemonade. We've all been handed a lemon. Now, some people are going to mount that lemon. They're going to take pictures of that lemon. They're going to talk about how tough life is with the lemon. And then there are some people that are just going to take that lemon and cut that baby open and make them some lemonade. In fact, say to yourself, again, you may be by yourself. If you're not by yourself, say to someone beside you, say to someone right now, I'm making lemonade. So when people ask you, what are you doing in the crisis? Well, I'm making lemonade. See, Napoleon Hill. All right, I'm about to dig in with you. Hang on. Fasten your seatbelts. Napoleon Hill said, every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. That is a powerful statement, but my folks, listen to me carefully. It's only a true statement if your perspective is right. Don't miss this. I'm going to read the statement again, and then you determine if it's true in your life or if it's not true. Every adversity, every failure, every heartache comes with the seed of an equal or greater benefit. I will not get an equal or greater benefit from adversity unless I have a perspective that believes that truth. If I believe nothing good can come out of something that is bad, then I will never, ever take advantage of that asset.
Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast, where our goal is to help you increase your reputation as a leader, increase your ability to influence others, and increase your ability to fully engage your team to deliver remarkable results.